There is an old Haitian proverb, beyond the mountains, there are more mountains. These words were never more true than on January the 12th, 2010. It is Haiti's worst earthquake in over 200 years. Nearly 300,000 people are killed or severely maimed. Almost instantly, the plight of some of the poorest and most disadvantaged people on Earth goes from bad to worse. For 200 years now, the Haitian people have been on their own. They have fought off slavery, survived civil wars, and overcome oppressive leadership. These years have been a struggle, but mercifully, in this current struggle, they will not be alone.
Angels lift us up. Angels protect us. Angels take care of us. What we were witnessing was an army of angels that had responded, and they were all in Milot.
John's in there getting ready to do the voice, so.
Dr. John Lovejoy Jr., a retired orthopedic surgeon from Jacksonville, Florida, is just one among thousands of volunteers. He's been traveling to Haiti for 30 years, 10 of them at Hopital Sacre Couer.
I found that it was very rewarding. I mean, probably I got as much out of it as they did, just the self-satisfaction of doing something for others.
Hopital Sacre Couer, located in Milot, is a 73-bed hospital funded by the US-based Crudem Foundation. In the week just prior to the quake, Tim Traynor, a retired electrical engineer, had been volunteering here.
I was just sitting on the deck there with my laptop in my lap, and it was a little bit before 5 o'clock, and we heard what sounded to me like the UN coming up the road. They have these big, heavy-duty trucks, and they make a loud, rumbling sound, and it actually sounded like it was coming from that area. We're in a valley there in Milot, and there's mountains kind of on 3 sides of us, and I just thought, man, they have got a load, or there must be 2 of them. But within 2 or 3 seconds, it got so loud that you could not talk over the top of it. The buildings began to tremble.
At the earthquake's epicenter, Port-au-Prince is being destroyed.
As I ran outside, something came to my mind. Something grabbed me, and I felt my stomach was tied up in knots. I ran over to get my daughter. As I got there, I saw the house was totally flattened. My mom and I went over to a friend's house, and I was sitting on my mom's lap. I started hearing things shaking and things were turning around. I heard something go goudou, goudou, and I started running and it pulled me in. I started going the other way and a door fell on my foot.
Now
the first house fell. I was with my daughter and I ran, and then I came back to get her. When I came back to get her, the house fell on us.
With most of the healthcare facilities in Port-au-Prince either destroyed or badly damaged, hundreds of thousands of wounded will have to be transported elsewhere for treatment. Milot is just 70 miles to the north, but because of bad roads, it's an 8 to 10-hour drive.
I immediately called down to check on the hospital and found out that we had no major damage, we had no loss of life, and there were a lot of people that were injured and a lot of major damage in Port-au-Prince, and they were going to need some help.
At about the same time, the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons put out an email bulletin saying that the Haitian government was requesting orthopedic surgeons, and that was their primary need.
About that time, my son called, and he said, I've heard this, I've got a team together, and I said, well, I got a team together too, let's see if we can arrange to go down.
Devastating images from the earthquake travel around the world almost instantaneously. We all watch as our fellow human beings suffer, with little hope for the emergency care they desperately need to survive. A small hospital is waiting for them in the village of Milot, presently overlooked but fully operational.
There were those 4 or 5 days where, it seemed like everybody ignored us. The entire world didn't know we existed or could care less that we existed. There was so much confusion and panic that was going on. I think they completely forgot about us. But days and days passed. There was a just almost apathetic viewpoint of us. I'm not sure I understand why to this day.
All the airports were closed. We called the military. They were not taking any, what they call NGOs, non-government people.
And there were private aircraft making it in, but they were sporadic. And in the initial few days, it sounded like the reports we were getting is that it was very unorganized.
The medical team is assembled in 24 hours. It takes another day to secure a private plane for the 3-hour flight into Cap Haitian.
Through the generosity of Clean the World, which was a corporation based out of Orlando, we were given access to a private aircraft.
I don't think any of us had any idea what we were going to see or what we were going to witness. I just remember that day, those first sort of early hours of so many emotions running through my head at that time. There was certainly a lot of exhilaration and anxiety.
What all will you be doing over there?
Whatever we can do. Whatever we can do for all the patients. We're going to do, yes, mostly orthopedic surgery, but we're going to do what we need to do.
They will arrive on a Sunday, just 5 days after the Tuesday afternoon quake.
We're on our descent into Haiti. It's kind of the calm before the storm. Outside, you can see that it's deceptively beautiful.
We had a lot of anxious questions going down there, and when we landed, we were met and transported by car from Cap Haitian into the hospital, which is close to an hour ride, 12, 15-mile ride.
We're in the Land Rover heading to the hospital. The operator of the camera is from the Resmi head into the hospital.
Initially, it was very interesting. There was no damage in Cap Haitian. The only sign of anything irregular was a little bit in the attitude of people.
And going in, as we approach the hospital, here comes a helicopter.
Incoming chopper, incoming. They're in for 30 seconds.
I went and met with Tim, trainer, and kind of introduced myself and said, I'm here to do whatever you can. And so we kind of spoke, and it became very obvious that if we wanted the helicopters to be able to land there, that we needed to get some folks off the field.
And I think none of us really appreciated the gravity of the situation until we saw them coming out of the helicopter. A lot of these people had been injured for several days, with bones sticking out, open wounds. By then, some of them had infections, and some of them had had primitive operations.
It was just astonishing. We thought, oh my gosh, here it's happening already.
So when we went out in the soccer field, we ran into an American medical team there, and we met that team for the first time. And so they were sort of overseeing the organization of the casualties.
The medical team from Florida joins Dr. Stephen Fletcher's team from St. Barnabas Medical Center in New Jersey, who had arrived the day before. Local Haitians are also doing everything possible to help. Adding to the contingent, the U.S. Coast Guard, one of the first foreign emergency responders on the scene, is delivering patients.
I was in Vietnam, and I've been in mass casualty situations, and a lot of these people had never experienced it, and the concern was, how are we going to deal with this effectively as a small group in a small hospital?
So we're ready to go. Team Lovejoy's ready to go. And really within 15 or 20 minutes of arriving in the town of Milot, I was scrubbed in and operating, and the very first patient I worked on was an amputation. And then the second patient came in, it was another amputation, and the third patient came in, and it was a double amputation.
I would venture to say that probably 90% of the people that were injured in this earthquake had an orthopedic injury. Things falling on them, laying under block walls for days.
And I remember walking out that afternoon of the OR, it was probably 7:30 or 8 o'clock that night, having helped on the fourth amputation, and that hit me. That was probably, looking back, it was absolutely the toughest moment for me.
By that afternoon, it became very apparent that this was just a tragedy of some biblical proportion. I think that's when it started to really sink in that we were going to have to play a role, because we heard that so many of the hospitals in the Port-au-Prince area were destroyed.
So now, do both of these sterilizers work?
No. One terminal sterilizer, which in layman's terms just means one that takes probably 2.5 to 3 hours to sterilize a big load of instruments, and then another hour for them to dry enough to use.
It's not 100% complete, but it looks like it's about 90. It does have screws.
You know, every case has to be thought out, what you need, and there's all kinds of nuts, bolts, screws, and drills and saws that go into orthopedics. It's like sophisticated carpentry.
Can you hear me? You can connect up that in about, you can try that now or in about 5 minutes if you like. Okay, are we going to do audio, or you want to do video too?
The best time for us to use a satellite was between, say, 12:30 to maybe 2:30 in the morning.
I had never met Tim before, didn't know anything about Tim. But when we met Tim, he had basically become the emergency response director for the area. And in particular, he was very instrumental in trying to get them to recognize Milot as a destination for these wounded, and that we had a functioning, non-damaged facility. We had surgeons on site. You know, one of the greatest concerns was the length of time it was taking to get patients to a hospital.
And I think there were a lot of frustrations knowing that we were trying very hard to get the word out, even with limited resources to get the word out. We were trying to get the word out, but we weren't getting any patients.
As long as the clouds don't go by, we'll be fine.
Tim was on his computer sitting outside in this courtyard. Wherever he could get reception, he would move.
Tim Trainer was a force of nature.
I'm going to try getting a little bit closer to the wireless and see if I can get a little bit stronger signal, okay?
And he would be talking, really yelling at someone on the other end of his computer, Skyping with dozens of different radio and news organizations to get the word out that where we were.
Tim Trainer turned out to be much better at communicating. We had no communication except, fortunately, AT&T let us use their towers, and we used cell phones and text. And we were texting, cell phoning the Navy.
The frustration that we're having here in Milot is that many of the locations in and around Port-au-Prince that are trying to handle some of these critical care cases aren't secure. And it's creating some problems for the Coast Guard and other relief teams. The frustration is we have full complement of medical teams here, orthopedic surgeons and trauma teams that have flown in from the United States, as well as our own Haitian doctors and nurses.
He was Skyping, he was talking to the world. He managed to reach CBS, ABC, NPR, even BBC World. He talked to Australia and Ireland. Someone must have been listening.
So, I mean, we could be in operation 24/7. My surgeons are just sitting here on their hands waiting for for patients while they're dying in Port-au-Prince. It is extremely difficult for us, and frankly, not something we're taking very well here.
It has now been 6 days since the quake.
Yesterday we had one load of 5. We just don't know. They just need to get us patients here. And they've been doing their best, but I mean, we need to be getting more because there's plenty of injured people out there.
And then suddenly the helicopters started coming, and they started coming, and they kept coming, and it became overwhelming at some point.
Probably one of the most moving things to me was how everybody banded together.
They were evaluated. Those who need surgery were carried on a stretcher up the hill to the hospital, put in the waiting area. The waiting area became so full that we had to begin to prioritize them.
But I'm getting ready to do the little boy with the open tip head first.
We started getting helicopters landing, every 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes 2 at a time, throughout most of the day, and the numbers dramatically went up.
He needs to go to x-ray for his femur. His femur's x-rays will be ready to do him. Okay, no problem.
I'm going to do an exam on this guy. I'll set up. He's got another one to go before she does anyway, so if we can get the labs and the x-rays, push the long on her, he's got one more case he can do right now.
Yeah, little girl. Yeah, I've asked. Okay. Everything's ordered.
Okay, all right.
None of us knew each other. Our little core group did, but the people that came in as volunteers, none of us knew each other. And yet, it didn't seem to matter. Everybody was there with the same purpose in mind, the same outcome, and that was to take care of these people.
This gentleman, obviously 6 days ago, when the earthquake happened, he obviously had a traumatic amputation of his left hand. It needs to be debrided, and I'm giving him a little anesthesia so that we can do it humanely.
These poor people are literally in agony. They have been suffering for a week, with no medication to numb any of the pain. Dangerous infections are beginning to set in.
He's got a lot of pain.
The local Haitians had probably never experienced that kind of schedule. And we just kept going because the patients kept coming in, and we just had to keep going.
We have the little girl out here. She's got an open infected tib fib that's probably going to be an amputation. So we'll do it after that? She can go, whoever's available next in this room. General surgery's got
Dr. Harold Prevel is the most phenomenal man. He was there all the time. He was working right beside us, right with us.
There were 2 little girls that I think about every day. And one was a little girl named Sade. Well, I didn't think Sade would live.
Well, she's probably going to go to surgery next. Okay. Hey, sweetheart.
What is she saying?
When will she be able to get home?
Soon. Do our best.
Yeah.
There weren't any other options than amputations. I mean, many of these patients, sepsis was already setting in. And there wasn't an option. It wasn't an option to salvage a limb in really almost any case, maybe one or two, but at that point, septic infections were spreading to the body that these patients would have died literally in hours if we didn't amputate. And there just weren't options, and I think I wasn't prepared for that. There weren't options.
When you're sitting there and you're giving anesthesia to this little girl who is now, she doesn't have her parents. She's a new orphan. She's away from her home. She had this terrible trauma that happened to her, and she's gone. And you're putting her to sleep so they can, cut her leg off. Is just, I couldn't take it. I was losing it at that point.
Even though you were emotionally drained and you were physically drained and exhausted, and the thought of one more helicopter was about all you could think about or all you could handle, something just happened, and the next stretcher comes back and the next patient passes you by on a bed getting ready to go on the OR, and it's the next one, and there might be another one after this one.
Unbelievable. We had 5 helicopters land. I don't even know how many patients came in. We basically ran 3 ORs continuously all day long. It was amazing. And we're not done. It's 8:30 at night. We still have 3 more cases, 1 with the general surgeons, 2 with the orthopedic team. And then I think we're gonna try and get some sleep. We have 2 cases lined up for each room in the morning. And that doesn't include whatever is brought in by helicopter tomorrow. So they've definitely found out we're here. Our next problem is equipment. It's another deceptively beautiful morning in Haiti. It's Stephanie here. Tell us what has been your impression so far of this trip?
Crazy, overwhelming, exhausting.
Yeah, crazy, overwhelming, exhausting. That's pretty good.
Yeah, but fabulous experience, and absolutely glad I made the decision to come. Be something I'll obviously never forget.
I would second that. I definitely think forgetting is going to be hard to do.
On this day, they will receive some good news.
Good morning. How's she doing?
She has been. La formal? She has been.
Okay. All right.
Sade survives the night, and her prognosis is good, in spite of the fact that she's lost part of her left leg.
She's having some pain. All right.
That looks good. Another concern was communication. I mean, most of the staff and the nurses didn't speak English. Most of them spoke French or Creole.
Yeah, let me get the translator.
Don't put him to sleep yet.
Patrick Haitian is a Haitian that became a translator, a volunteer translator for Sacre Couer.
We're going to need to do an amputation. Do an amputation.
I was headed towards one of the other doctors trying to help them, and I heard someone say in English, whenever the Americans come, things really start happening. And I looked around to see who was talking, and I said, "Who said that?" And this Haitian man raised his hand up and said, "I did."
If we don't do it, you can get an infection.
I invited him to come and help us because we needed a translator badly. And eventually, he became a permanent translator at the hospital. and he has been valuable to us ever since.
He feels very weak. He hasn't eaten, so yeah.
We understand, and the sooner we do this.
Aussitôt que on finit de faire ça, on va récupérer au plus rapide, ok?
So when I find something, it's like finding a treasure. It is finding a treasure.
So there was an awful lot of logistics that were difficult. I mean, we had to turn the holding prep area into like a surgical prep area room for all the trays and all the instruments. We had to mark them so everybody could find what they needed. We go there in a week, and if we do 20 cases, we've had a great week. This week, we did 180 cases.
So there was great concern that, you know, we were going to start using a lot of equipment very quickly, a lot of items that were not replaceable. We didn't know how much of them we had. And so these were all very legitimate concerns.
You know, the hospital, after those helicopters and those buses started coming, the hospital got full. And I remember talking to Tim, I'm like, where are we gonna put these patients? And Tim was like, we'll find a way. And so we go across the street to the school.
This school had no electricity, had no water, had no sanitation facilities. The roofs all leaked.
Pretty soon that school's full. You know, all the classrooms are full and everything there's patients lying on the floor. I mean, everything. I'm like, Tim, he's like, we'll find a way.
We set about immediately beginning to renovate that facility, bringing power into it, et cetera.
And then we went to another school down the street and kind of we rebuilt the roof on this school in a day.
When we got into the second school and we expanded to 500 beds, and then we took a courtyard, or actually a banana plantation, we leveled that and put up 6 large tents with a capacity of another 300 beds.
Sir, we take her with the whole hardboard, right?
Yes. Yeah, then we'll take the board out.
But by Wednesday, once the ER physicians arrived, we actually were able to establish a real triage system.
We need some saline to pour on this in order to get it off.
So dressing changes every 2 days would be satisfactory?
We have nurses right there.
Okay. So even dressing changes every day is fine.
Every day.
Keep him MPO and get me an x-ray as soon as possible. We may be able to do that tonight.
John, do you need anything orthopedic for the team to bring down?
Gowns we need. Plenty of gowns, yes. Bring as many gowns as you can.
Let me speak to him.
Here.
Hey, this is Dr. Lovejoy. When you guys come down, bring with you any small frag and large frag sets you have. And power, like saws. We've got a lot of batteries, but we need more saws. They're all striker saws. And drills. Drills are what we need the most. We need drills more than we need saws. In the back of your head, you're thinking, can we do this? You know, are the numbers going to be so great, you know, that we're going to be overwhelmed? What we normally do when we come down here and do medical mission trips is that Jerry or one of our other surgeons here will have some patients come to the clinic for orthopedics, and they'll tell them to come back for a set date when we're here, and then we'll go to our supply room and see what's been donated and figure out which items match what operations need to be done. But in this situation, obviously, we couldn't do much planning, so we're basically doing it on the fly.
Patients started coming in some major volume, and it was like setting up a MASH unit without the MASH unit government backup.
It was, to me, remarkably easy to get the field organized. I mean, probably within a day, we had our system down pretty well.
The team devises a protocol for triaging injuries and prioritizing surgeries according to the urgency of the medical condition.
Like all medical emergencies, a patient would come in with tape on their forehead.
These are our first cases, our second cases to go. I'm going to put our general surgery cases here and move them in.
And when the patient went into the room, they took the paper, put it on the door of the room, moved the next one up. Someone had to be there to coordinate all that, and that's what Stephanie and Carolyn did. And And that's no fun.
It's just a lot of cases, and we have a system for it, but we don't have the equipment that we're used to having, so you have to run around and find everything. It's not as easy as being back home sometimes.
You know how doctors are. They're very assertive personalities.
Put her in the post-op area because we'll have a nurse there who can monitor the transfusion, and that'll be the safest place for her to get it.
What did you do?
It takes a certain finesse to try and keep these guys in the right direction, and these girls were really good at it. They're admirable job.
That's why I said it's done late, and then she should say.
Do you want to go ahead and do her tomorrow then?
No, it's too much on the schedule.
Okay, but you do want her to get the unit now?
Absolutely.
Can I go with you?
Come on.
All right.
There was a doctor I was leaving with on the plane, and he was just amazed at how little pain medicine these patients were able to get by with and not complain.
The things that we did under the anesthesia that we used would probably never be done here.
Though this young man will be awake during his surgery, he will not feel the pain associated with his amputation.
He received spinal anesthesia, so they just give him a shot in the back, and that's it.
Do we have some Xeroform?
He gets complete numbing of both of his legs.
We have some Xeroform, Pat?
Right now. Unfortunately, he could hear what we're saying, and he can hear the drill.
The Xeroform over here opened.
The anesthesiologists were almost the limiting factor, and you would expect 3 people who'd been there already for a week when the earthquake hit to just say, time out. And they didn't. They just kept going. They just went from one room to the next.
The young man that lost his leg does not survive the night.
He's a fairly young guy. This is the guy that we did last night.
This is the guy we did last night. We tried to do the BK on him.
I don't think that's what killed him, man. I think probably.
We had been working really hard. We had been making a lot of positive gains, and all of a sudden, we had our first mortality.
Dude, I mean, he had a severe crush injury, and his entire leg was swollen up. His whole foot was necrotic for 5 days.
And we knew this was going to happen, but even though you rationalize that it's going to happen, the volume's too high, the injuries are too severe, eventually this might happen. When it actually happens, it really has an impact on you, and it really got a lot of us upset.
Well, all right.
This
is
the first.
We talk about it. I just want to make
We're
sure
doing the best we can.
I know that we're doing the best that we can.
Everyone that dies is difficult. I mean, when you practice anesthesia, you may have one patient that may die on you every 3-4 years. But I had a day where I had 3 patients die on me in one day.
Epinephrine?
We got a, how old is he?
What?
How old, how many years old? Asthmatic attack.
A little faster.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And then you're resuscitating a little child that's got the same thing that your child at home has, and you say to yourself, if you only had the resources. He's done.
I don't know how people can take this much longer like this.
Copy and dump it in there, and we work. And then copy that other file. And, put that on.
I cry every night when I go to sleep. I feel exhausted, and I feel horribly emotionally torn throughout this, and I look at these other doctors, the Haitian doctors and the nurses, and you see the sadness in their eyes, and you see a tear come to them when they look and they realize that their country is going to be a country of orphans and amputees. I was texting to my wife that there's a little part of me that's always going to be in Haiti. I can't see myself knowing the amount of suffering that goes on in this country and not be part of the solution of trying to fix it. I'm going to have a lot to work out when I get back to the States. I still know that I'm going to be coming back every year.
Today we've had at least 6 airlifts. We're getting chopper loads coming in from the Coast Guard and the Navy.
Working with the team in Milot and tapping into its global resources, the Crudem Foundation uses social media outlets and broadcast networks to solicit a worldwide appeal for critical medical supplies and volunteers.
We're desperately running low on supplies right now.
What we could handle, we did count on the number of patients we had, how many available beds we thought we could fill, whatever that number was. We try to disseminate that off to the Navy or the Coast Guard and say, look, we can take 50 some odd patients tomorrow. It would turn out there'd be 75 or 80. I know the situation. That's what we said.
Okay, and we still have no sterile gowns, so we can't do the surgeries without
What
them.
we're going to have to do is we're going to have to kind of warehouse them a little bit up here. And as soon as we get the stuff, we're going to have to work on it because they can't do it in Cap Haitian either. There's no place for these people. Right now, the guy that arrived here this morning, they pulled him out of rubble and laid him on a sidewalk for 3 days.
I know, we have people on the floor in the clinic, but all I'm saying is that we can't advance with surgery until we get at least the gowns and the X-Fix
Let me just check
and
with
gloves.
Carol. Let's just check with Carol.
Better idea. Tell the Navy when they stop and we get us the name of somebody that we can talk to, not just giving them a list. Let's talk to somebody who can stock us, okay? Somebody that's got some balls to tell us what can do something.
The number of nurses and physicians that I would see each night saying, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this, and that list was getting huge.
You know, what we had was ample to supply us under normal circumstances, but we're running out real fast. We need sterile gowns, large and extra large. We need sterile gloves.
Nothing more frustrating than to be in the middle of surgery and go look for something while you're working on a person who's under anesthesia and you're trying to bring it all together and you look for something that isn't there that you need desperately to make it happen.
We need cases of alcohol bottles, external fixation systems for upper and lower extremities, and we need a steam autoclave. If we can get those supplies in place and keep them coming, we need them stat.
After several days of waiting, the world finally responds, and it is simply overwhelming.
I saw water in there.
I saw Dermabond.
I saw everything.
There's a tired stuff on you.
No excuses now. We got to get there.
Where's that anesthesiologist though?
I saw.
We got the two.
He's coming.
Yeah, he's coming today.
I saw Tylenol.
Cool. All right, let's go. I'm up then. Up, we got stuff. We got 2 more anesthesists coming this afternoon. We got 3 surgeons this morning. And we're going as fast as the hospital will let us. I think the real problem is our facility can just do so much, and they are working their hearts out. We're going to work.
I never, and I know my dad never thought we couldn't do it, but there were certainly times when it seemed like we were pushing the limits of the capabilities of our own team and the hospital staff.
Tough stuff to walk out and see that. You don't know what she's going to be left with, what kind of life, but did the best you do.
It was physically difficult, and but it was emotionally challenging too, to try and just move through seeing what was happening, especially with the children. I think everybody's energy level got zapped a little when we got to that, not our energy level so much as our emotional level, to see children abandoned by circumstance without any help. Tough.
3 kids came in, all mangled, and I just had to walk outside and start crying. Everybody came up, big group hug, big support.
But think of what they'd be going through without you.
Yeah, you're doing
What a
a
disaster.
whole lot to help.
Well, that's it. It's all right. I just need to get it out of me.
I think everybody had at least one of those moments. But then then you sort of get yourself back together and you go on with what you're doing.
The people of Milot were probably some of the most remarkable people in the world I've ever seen.
They've come down and they set up camp out here for the people who are displaced, and they're cooking the meals for everybody. So who's displaced, and we put in the school. So the whole city has just opened up. It's unbelievable.
And the people of Milot started hanging outside the hospital and just standing around and participating in ways that I never thought a town could come together. The Boy Scouts were offering up their services and carrying the patients out of the helicopters and getting them up to the hospital. And then suddenly, well, who's going to start feeding these people? And the townspeople came in. You'd see people walking down the streets with a handful of onions or any piece of food that they had in their house that they could spare. And they set up fire pots, and they were cooking, and they were going in and feeding the patients. And there were women that were cradling these orphan babies. And all of these people were strangers to them too. They were Haitians, but they were still strangers. I mean, they'd spend hours singing the babies to sleep at night and brushing their hair, and just the emotional connection that this town brought to these people who were literally landed on their doorstep.
So the notion of saying to somebody, I can't pay you, but I need your help, or not asking and people showing up to bathe the victims, to help them eat, just spend time with them. We had at one point over 100 children that were victims, some with amputations, some that were orphaned as a result.
Hi.
People appeared to be their parents, to take that role. It was important for them to do that. And if you asked them at the time, they'd say, well, these are our brothers and sisters. And of course we have to help them. So the role that they played, I think, certainly eased the burden on the hospital. For the 10-week period of time that I was there, post-earthquake, nobody ever asked to get paid.
While most of the teams say their goodbyes, many will return within the year. For now, they've seen over 500 patients and performed 180 surgeries. They leave behind their Haitian friends and patients who have to learn how to live again, many without the use of an arm or leg.
In a third world country, to lose a limb under any condition is devastating.
Becoming an amputee can play mind games even on the strongest of person. And in Haiti, they have this view, some people have a view that an amputee is not as good as an able-bodied person.
I realized after doing all the amputations there was going to be a need, and I knew that there was, from previous experience, there was no real prosthetic lab.
So as soon as he came back, he said, you know, I'd like to build a lab.
I said, Mike, you know, why don't we take a container and make a full shop so we can manufacture them down there?
Dr. Lovejoy Jr. hatches a resourceful plan to retrofit a shipping container as a prosthetic lab. He enlists the help of some hometown friends.
I went to a couple other good friends in town, Ed Doherty and Downing Nightingale, and asked for their help. The sink comes up here. There's going to be...
The build-out begins with virtually no money and only volunteer labor. As work progresses, equipment suppliers join the cause, kicking in heavy discounts, and a state-of-the-art prosthetic lab worth hundreds of thousands of dollars is constructed.
If you'd have followed the trailer from the time we started, obstacle after obstacle came into place. It was never something that Dr. Lovejoy says, you know, do we have any money? No. Do we have this? No. Do we have this? And he just said no nonchalantly. He never worried about anything. I said, well, you know, we got to get these things in place. And he goes, don't worry about it. It'll happen. And it did.
So I started ordering equipment, and my wife said, what are all these charges on our Amex and Visa? You know, you got $30,000. What are you doing? I said, well, these are what we need for the lab. And Jacksonville, the people were wonderful. People came forward when they heard what we were doing, donated money. You know, before you knew it, I could cover all the credit cards, and we had enough to complete the lab.
Incredibly, in less than 3 months, the lab is completed and on its way to Haiti. Even its passage is donated.
It's amazing because most of the time, things that we want to do in Haiti take a long time to bring to fruition. And John Lovejoy got on the stick. People came together, they saw the need, and it's down there. It was down there by the end of April, and this earthquake just happened in January. I mean, I would have thought that'd be a 1.5-year project at least.
Before the lab is officially open for business, amputees are already lining up in anticipation of being fit for their new prostheses.
The biggest problem is having to choose who goes first. That was probably the most heart-wrenching thing, is to so everybody's so anxious to get a prosthesis. And so you have to decide who you're going to make that limb for first.
The first patients are selected based on the type of materials that are on hand to build their unique residual limbs. Patrick Etienne, the Haitian translator who has been helping doctors communicate with patients, is in training to be a certified prosthetist, meaning he will make and fit the artificial limbs, in addition to running the lab.
I didn't think Sade would live, but never in my wildest imagination did I think that I would see footage of this little girl walking around with a prosthetic, or any of the Haitians for that matter. I mean, when we were doing double amputations on some of these people in the first few days, I walked out of the OR thinking, are we doing good for them? What are we going to be leaving this society with? We're leaving a whole generation of people, sometimes missing 1 and 2 limbs, and it never dawned on me that they would have prosthetics and they'd be walking again, and they'd really get their life back.
Azor, a 25-year-old factory worker is selected to be the first recipient of a new limb that will replace part of his right leg.
Oh, well, I felt like it was a beautiful thing because I did not have a foot, and now I am standing on 2 feet.
Things are not easy for Haiti, but you would like your child to become something. You may not have the means to help the child, but the child may want to become a doctor or something. But you need to keep pushing your child forward.
They were happy to be alive, you know, and they got a problem. But look at those kids, they're an example to everybody. They didn't know each other, they're now the best friends, and they do everything together. They are thankful. They appreciate what we're doing, but they don't realize the capability they now have. You know, they're made whole in society. They can get on with their lives.
I'm happy that something we started has turned out so well, that there is an option for these patients that I don't think anybody ever dreamed was going to be a reality down there. And it came so quickly.
The old Haitian proverb is "Dem one, gim one," which it means, literally translated, behind mountains are mountains. To me, it means you just keep persevering, you know, and yeah, you'll overcome that challenge, there'll be others, but you just keep persevering because really there's no other alternative.
I think the 2 weeks that I went have certainly opened my eyes to a need I didn't appreciate before.
One of the most wonderful experiences was working with my son. We had never really operated together, and we operated as a team, more as a doctor to doctor than a father to a son.
I remember calling my mom, and I wanted to let her know that I'd landed back on U.S. soil and I was going to be home back in D.C. in a few hours. And I had all these things I wanted to tell her, and I just burst into tears. And I think all I could manage to eke out was, I'm home, I'm back in Florida. I remember my mom saying, you know, you've been through an amazing experience, and you're going to find a way to deal with all of it, and you're going to find a place to put it all. And she said, you just are going to need some time to work through this.
Even though you have this tragedy and you have this scar upon humanity with this earthquake, you had so many people that showed some of the best qualities of the human race by coming together and help people.
Angels everywhere you turned. I mean, you know, none of us had wings except the pilots, but those were angels too.
I mean, the place was overrun by angels. Bernardo Santana, you know, he stands behind the camera and he doesn't get the credit, but if you notice, a lot of the shots in the film are shot from grass level. It's because he was putting down his camera and getting in there and doing stuff to help all of us.
Angels lift us up. Angels protect us. Angels take care of us. And it seemed appropriate, not only from an American viewpoint, but from a Haitian viewpoint, that what we were witnessing was an army of angels that had responded, and they were all in Milot.
We are all proud to be Haitian. And so when she needs help, it is our duty to come help her. And I think that's how we all felt, it is our duty as sons and daughters of Haiti to come back and help during that time.
I could be doing a lot of playing and other things, but this makes a difference in people's lives. And if you can make a difference in people's lives, then your life is fuller.
visit our website, angelsofmilot.com.